etc. Well, that's already been done. There are movies out now under different guises, bring it into us in different fashions, different ways, but always the same conclusion. And it wasn't long after the first meeting that Final Cut, the movie with Robert Williams, 2004, that came out, and other ones have followed suit. Just to get used to an idea of having something in you which could monitor your activities like a camera, your thoughts like a camera, what you see like a camera, what you hear, and play it back after you're deceased to anyone who wants to hear it. That'll be a great boon for the police too, eh? They won't have to ask you questions about anything, they'll just have to tap into your chip. The cartoons have heroes with them, with chips now, with superpowers. That's how they'll sell it to the young. Now, at these meetings, they never ever discussed politics. They didn't even mention governments, because these characters, these high scientists, know that these are just a show for the public. They work for the real boys. So they speak with authority when they speak. And they said this will be promoted through these methods. Cartoons, movies, etc. and novels. And it's quite easy to do. But when you look at especially cultural organizations, interestingly enough, in the Soviet system, they had a department of culture. The government had a department of culture. And when I was growing up, I realized we have one in Britain too. And Canada's got a department of culture. Well, why would you need that? Well, you need it because their job is to dish out money to certain authors, often with instructions, to build stories around particular ideas. That's how it's done. That's how you guide culture. You can't have any old guy coming along with a story, not on the script, not on the format, and doing his thing, and everybody loving it. So that everything's done by grants within the arts industry. And high masonry, of course. A good mason never asks why anything. He immediately must obey the order from a superior. And that's how they get ahead in life. All politicians do it. They don't think for a second, they don't guess what's going on. It doesn't twig eventually what's going on. They clue in not to ask questions. You're a good boy if you don't ask questions. You just obey. That's how the whole structure works. So check out Final Cut and other ones. Some of them are pretty awful and third rate, but I'm sure they'll put more money into it as they really try to familiarize us with the idea. They haven't yet, I don't think, put out movies where a child is found who's been kidnapped because they have a chip. I'm surprised that these things on these TV dramas they have. There's nothing on television anymore except sports, TV dramas, lawyer dramas, and hospital dramas. The main areas of controlling you see, medicine, law, etc. So I'm surprised they haven't put a movie out with some little cutie is kidnapped and everybody's biting their nails wondering what's happening, and here's the guys with their, all their test tubes and DNA samples and their little tracker for the chip, and they find them at the end, and Bruce Willis or somebody will get the big part, and he'll go and storm there like Rambo and rescue them at the end, and they'll thank the scientists that designed it and all that. That will come, if it's not out already. And one really, really good movie which makes you think. You see, some movies make you think. Most don't. You get downloaded through emotion. We call it emotive responses, emotive indoctrinations. But in Devil's Advocate, the movie shows you the nature of man. And there's a lot of good quips in there where the devil, has the biggest law firm in New York, it talks to a guy who doesn't know that he's actually the son of the devil, who's been trained to take over. And he tells me how they're taking over, how they're taking the world over. He said, it's by turning out armies of lawyers, millions of them, millions and millions of lawyers, that through law that you're manacled and you can't move and you can't speak. It's all through law. Law is a wall around your mind. These are a few movies to look at more carefully. Those who have seen them, perhaps you can look at them more carefully than you did before. Tremendously revealing, because there's always the revelation of the method for those who are wise enough to see and hear it. There's always an expose of how it's done and why it's done for those who can hear and see. It's like the Globe Theatre, as I say, that built for Shakespeare, the Shakespearean plays. It wasn't called the Globe for nothing. The globe, the world, where the stage went down into the audience. And in those days, they brought in audience participation. They made you involved, you get involved in the story. And many people got carried away with the drama and thought it was all real. And when that happens, the actors know they're convincing, it's working. When the audience forgets they're watching a fake, they're watching an act, then the actors are doing their job, and it's getting across to the people that they're convinced, because now you've inserted into their minds the possibility that whatever you're showing them can be real or is real. And you've actually changed them, the alchemical change. You've changed them. You've cast a spell upon them. That's how it's done. In the esoteric traditions, the stage became a microcosm of the macrocosm, where all knowledge, which is true, is stored within the person. But it's also, the person is a miniature of the entire universe. Everything that's out there is contained within. That's part of the religion of the esoteric occultic groups at the top. A play itself could be called a talisman in a sense, a talismanic microcosm. They could actually use theatrical effects, even in Shakespeare's time, for thunder. Many different kinds of stage effects were very, very convincing. They even had the burning of Troy, a large play, huge play, performed there, and the conflagration of Rome. And they had dozens and dozens of altars all around the stages for the burning of apparently the sacrifices. Nothing was spared in the effects of the period to cast a spell upon the public. Now, the public always think they're simply going to be entertained for fun, to enjoy themselves, and often they are. But they never realize that their way is being shaped for them, that their thinking is actually being shaped for them. They're looking into an area where they'd never have gone themselves in their own lives. But it's being presented to them, and they participate in the play, in a sense. Now, at one time, the magus, as they call him, the magician, in the Rosicrucian Masonic tradition, was on a personal quest for understanding themselves in relation to the macrocosm. And it was in the same period that a split took place in the 1500s, where certain of their members became politicized and